What if Padme joined Anakin and became Empress? Let's start this story on Mustafar, during the conversation between Anakin and Padme. Padme ran down the platform of her Naboo cruiser, her heart pounding as she embraced her husband. Her mind swirls with the terrible things Obi-Wan had told her, the Jedi, younglings, and helping Palpatine. How could Anakin do this? Padme asks Anakin what's happened to him, what has he done? But Anakin tells her everything she's heard are lies, that the Jedi have betrayed him, betrayed them, and tried to take away everything they have fought for. Padme mutters his name, telling him that he's been blinded by Palpatine, by the Sith. But Anakin stands tall, his jaw clenched, telling her that the Sith have shown him the truth. The Jedi would have destroyed them, destroyed their family. But now he has the power to save her. But Padme hesitated, her heart aching as she searched his face. She questions him, challenging his loyalty to Palpatine, that he wishes to rule the galaxy through fear. Does Anakin want the same? But he takes a step closer, softening his tone, and grabs Padme's hand, telling Padme that they won't rule through fear, but through strength. He tells her to open her eyes. The Republic was weak, corrupted by greed. Together they can create a new order, one where there's no war, no suffering. He pleaded for her to join him, that together they can create a galaxy where their child will be saved. Padme tries to take a step back, but Anakin held her close. She whispers his name, telling Anakin that he's killed people, innocent people. How can he justify that? Anakin almost laughs and asks her what did she think he's been doing the entirety of the Clone War. People have to die. It's a consequence of change. He didn't want to do it, but he had to. Sacrifices had to be made, but he tells her to think of the future they can build. With Padme by his side, governing the galaxy, they can fix everything. She has always wanted peace, and he can give it to her, if she'll join him. Padme caught her breath. Anakin's words were terrifying, yet there were logic to them. A vision of the galaxy that was no longer crippled by bureaucracy or endless wars. She thought of the Senate, how broken it had become. She thought of the countless lives lost during the war. She tells Anakin that what he's saying is dangerous and wrong. But what if it is right? What if they really can create a better galaxy? What if together they can make it all right? Anakin stepped closer, his hand gently brushing her cheek. He promised Padme that they can. With her wisdom and his power, they can do anything. Padme closed her eyes, a tear slipping down her cheek, but when she opened them, they were filled with a new determination. Padme asks Anakin what's left in their way, who responds by saying they must first finish ridding the galaxy of the Jedi, and then Palpatine is the last one who will stand in their way of galactic peace. They embraced, both now with a new goal ahead of them, but Anakin felt something change through the Force as he looked past Padme to her ship to see his former master, Obi-Wan Kenobi, standing determined. Kenobi walked down the ramp, shaking his head, asking Padme how she could join Anakin after everything he's done. But before anyone can say anything further, Anakin stepped forward, igniting his saber and telling Obi-Wan to not take another step. Kenobi tells Anakin that he doesn't want to fight him, but Anakin doesn't give him a choice. Anakin lunged, slashing his blade towards Obi-Wan, who ignited his to deflect the strike. The clash of lightsabers reverberated through the air as Padme stumbled back, her hands covering her mouth in shock. Anakin's attacks were relentless, each swing of his blade fueled by his anger and newfound determination. Obi-Wan continued parrying and countering, and leapt on a nearby platform, attempting to gain the higher ground. But Anakin followed without hesitation, driving Obi-Wan back. Obi-Wan screamed at Anakin that he can't win, that the path he's on will only lead to destruction. But Anakin tells him he's wrong, that Padme is with him, and together, they will create a galaxy in their image. Obi-Wan's heart ached. He could sense the darkness consuming him, and there was no reasoning with him now. Anakin's strikes grew more precise, each one coming closer to breaking Obi-Wan's defenses. With a sudden brutal swing, Anakin's blade knocked Obi-Wan's lightsaber from his grasp. Obi-Wan's eyes widened as Anakin's sapphire blue blade came at his throat. Padme cried out for Anakin to stop, but it was too late. Anakin had finished off his master, and he was victorious. Padme started crying as Anakin consoled her. He told her that he didn't want to do it, but Obi-Wan never would have allowed them to complete their plans. Padme understood, although how painful it was. Together they go back to Coruscant as Anakin reports to Palpatine about Obi-Wan's defeat, who was extremely happy with this. But when Palpatine saw Padme by his side, it filled him with some anger. Padme is a tether to the light inside Anakin, and for him to truly become his Sith apprentice and Darth Vader, Padme must be taken out. However, Palpatine knows the time for this isn't now, and rather will wait until after his children are born. Palpatine will give Anakin his perfect life with his family, and then strip it from him, plunging him into a despair that no one could ever rise from. The next day, Padme's water broke and she was rushed to hospital. Anakin contacted Sidious, who joined them immediately. They stood by Padme's hospital bed, waiting until their power would be needed. Anakin was fearful. This was it. The moment of his dreams was upon them. However, his and Sidious's power would not be required. Luke came out first, followed by Leia, and Padme's birth went smooth, and she survived. Sidious turned to Anakin, telling him he had done it. Through his rise in power and defeat of the Jedi, he had changed the future in which Padme dies. Anakin nodded, genuinely believing this, as in his mind, there is no other explanation. But Sidious turned back towards Padme with a gleam smile on his face. Twins, not one, but two new Sith apprentices that would be his to mold and train in his image, that will have the power to exceed Lord Vader. Sidious leaves and gives Anakin time with his family. Over the next couple of weeks, Sidious establishes the basis of his empire, ensuring worlds remain under his control with the clone army, whilst establishing the power structure in the Senate. Order 66 remained, and he slowly started implementing new laws and regulations that would ensure he remained in power. Meanwhile, during this time, Anakin spends most of his time with Padme at their home, with their new family, and living the life they had dreamed of. But at the same time, they were carrying out their own plans. Anakin knew there was no way Palpatine would let him live with his family, and thought he would attempt to take Anakin out so he could take the twins for himself. However, Palpatine's target was someone different. One day when Anakin and Padme were on a transport back to their apartment, Anakin felt a disturbance in the Force. He looks out of the window and saw a shuttle rushing towards them at high speed. Before Anakin could intervene, the shuttle shot them down, hitting their engine and causing their transport to start plummeting into the ground. Anakin grabs Padme and puts the twins between them and conjures up a Force barrier. They make contact with the ground at high speed. No way anyone else on the transport could have survived. As they hit the ground, the Force barrier was shattered, and Anakin was forced to let go of Padme and the twins. He hit his head, but as he stood up, slightly dazed, to see the wreckage all around him, he couldn't see Padme, but assumed she would be safe. The assassins no doubt were coming for him. He forced a piece of debris aside to see Padme, but behind her were the two assassins, with their blasters pointed at her. Anakin couldn't believe it. He wasn't the target. Padme was. As they fired, Anakin reached out with the Force, stopping the blasters' bullets as the assassins looked down in confusion. Anakin snapped their necks with the Force and threw his lightsaber towards the shuttle, causing it to crash next to them. He sends 3 more assassins on board, who exited. Anakin cast lightning at 2 of them, incinerating their skin on the spot, as Anakin pulled the last towards him and grabbed his throat, lifting him up into the air. With his other hand, he searched his mind, using a dark side technique that he had recently learned, called Force Domination, and searches through his past memories, dominating his mind with ease, and searched for the answers he sought. As he found it, the memories of Palpatine, ordering the assassins to kill Padme. Anakin takes Padme and the twins back to their home, and tells her the time has come to take over the Empire from Palpatine. Together they go to the Senate, but Padme goes to the offices, whereas Anakin goes to Palpatine's chamber. He bursts open the door to see Palpatine sitting at his chair. Sidious thought he would sense sadness in Anakin, but all he felt was anger, which indicated to him that his assassins had failed, and Anakin must have realized it was him who ordered it. He gleamed with anticipation. This fight would decide the future of the Sith. Anakin threw his blade at Palpatine, who sidestepped, whilst he brandished his Crimson One from his sleeve and rushed towards Anakin. With one hand, Anakin cast lightning at Palpatine, stopping his assault, and with the other, returned his lightsaber to his grasp. He disengaged the lightning and slashed at Palpatine. They both swung at immense speeds, both masters of all lightsaber forms, and each struggled to find an opening. Their blades locked, with their eyes mere centimeters from each other. Anakin's face was determined, whereas Palpatine bore a wide grin, one that Anakin wanted to wipe off so badly. And he did. He headbutted Palpatine, causing him to stumble back in pain, as Anakin cut off his lightsaber hand and kicked him in the chest, sending him flying back. Palpatine stood, nose bleeding and winded, whilst he recuperated his blade in his opposite hand. He rushed at Anakin and swung down, but Anakin threw away his blade and grasped Palpatine's wrist, stopping his lightsaber from arcing down, and with the other, cracked him across the jaw 5 times in a second. As Palpatine hung dazed, Anakin pushed him back and gripped his windpipe with the Force. Palpatine clasped at his throat, but Anakin didn't give up, squeezing as tight as he could as he sensed life has left Palpatine and dropped him to the floor. Anakin walked past him, taking his seat in the Senate console, and pressed the button to initiate a Senate meeting. His cart lifted upwards as he rose into the Senate chamber. He looked to his left to see Padme, who had walked across the platform to join him. She smiled at him, knowing Anakin must have been successful in ridding the galaxy of Palpatine. The center console continued to rise as senators rushed into the chamber, but murmurs quickly scattered as they started to realize that it was Anakin Skywalker and Padme Amidala, not Emperor Palpatine. Mas Amida joined them on their center console, asking Anakin and Padme what the meaning of this is, but Anakin tells him to silence, that he will realize soon. The Senate was completely full, and now silent and barked. Anakin spoke first, telling the chamber that Emperor Palpatine was dead. Murmurs scattered, and he waited for them to fall. He told the chamber that he killed him, and in his place, Anakin will take the position of Emperor. Palpatine was an evil tyrant. He would have destroyed the galaxy, but he, alongside Padme Amidala, the new Empress, will ensure peace and prosperity to the galaxy. No more wars, no more corruption, but freedom, justice, and security. He tells everyone that the Senate will continue to function, but simply to carry out orders. That any objection will be met with the full might of the clone army. Anakin turns and leaves, having said his piece, and leaves the final details to Padme. Padme will be the face of their empire, as he knows that will result in greater cooperation. Everyone knew Padme and trusted her to do the right thing. Over the following weeks, Anakin and Padme established their empire. The main difference between Anakin and Palpatine in their rule is Palpatine was focused on the future, whereas Anakin on the present. He wanted to stomp out the rest of the Jedi Order and maintain control, whereas Palpatine focused on the Death Star project, as well as his contingency plans in case he was defeated. Anakin met with the Kaminoans to continue the production of the clones, and they would become the Galactic Police stationed around his empire. However, this new batch of clones would be different. They would have less personality and would be more obedient to follow orders. After Anakin declared himself as Emperor, a former temple guard met him in his office, who revealed to Anakin that he'd been working alongside Palpatine and wanted to do the same with Anakin. Anakin accepted his declaration and made him the Grand Inquisitor. Sate Pistage, who was Palpatine's right-hand man, revealed to Anakin a facility on Ferrix where Palpatine was training Force sensitives in the dark side. Anakin traveled to this facility, where he met with the first batch of Inquisitors trained by Sidious. The Grand Inquisitor commanded them, and together they would begin hunting down the remaining Jedi. Over the following 5 years, Anakin trained intensely in the dark side of the Force, whilst working alongside Padme to establish the Empire. Initially there was some resistance, but after occupation by the clone army, they quickly complied with the Empire. Anakin and Padme at this point control all of Republic and Separatist space. However, they have plans to venture out further into the Outer Rim. Anakin's power grew immensely during this period. He had full access to the Jedi and Sith holocrons in the Jedi archives, as well as Palpatine's own personal holocrons. He completely mastered many darkside techniques, Force Drain, to suck life force from an opponent to the point of death, and his Sith lightning had turned red. With the Force, he had learned to levitate for a short period of time, and his favorite new ability is Deadly Sight, the power to incinerate an enemy fueled by one's hatred. But his greatest power has always been the ability to peer into the future. He trained on this, feeling the Force flow through him as he attempted to gaze into the unknown. And after 5 years of studying, he could do this at will, but the Force would only grant him short glimpses at any moment. He would use this power to stomp out resistance around the galaxy, and ultimately in his hunt against the remaining Jedi. He used this ability when meditating and focused on Master Yoda, and the Force granted him a vision of his location on Dagobah. Anakin goes by himself, eager to test how his power now compares to the Grand Master. The two dueled intensely, but Anakin's new abilities had surpassed the old and weakened Master and successfully killed him. During these 5 years, Anakin's priority was the Inquisitor program, and thus, he was successful in exterminating the remnants of the Jedi Order. With this, the galaxy was now Anakin's. No one could oppose him and Padme, and they could bring prosperity to the galaxy like they had envisioned. Or so Anakin thought. One evening after he tucked Luke and Leia into bed, he decided to spend some time in his meditation chamber. He focused deeply on the Force, looking for anything around the galaxy that needed his attention. The Force flowed calmly until it hit Anakin like a storm. It only came in flashes, and the details were fuzzy, but he had never seen anything like it. A massive fleet of ships traveling towards his galaxy. But their ships weren't normal. They were not made out of hard durasteel, but instead they were organic. They were alive. He snapped out of his vision in a cold sweat as Padme comforted him. She asked him what was wrong, and he simply told her that they were coming. In a matter of months, the Yuzong Vong would arrive in their galaxy, and once again, they would be thrust into a war. Anakin cursed. They were not ready. They hadn't had long enough to build an army strong enough to face them. However, the Force had granted him a premonition of their arrival, and gave him some months to prepare. Over the following months, Anakin meditated every day to learn everything about the Yuzong Vong that he could. He learned they were a race of warriors, born and bred to battle, but most importantly, they were immune to the Force. He shared everything he knew with his Inquisitors, and prepared them for the eventual war they would face. The Vong didn't want to conquer, but control, and knew he would need extra help in the war. Anakin traveled to the unknown regions in search for an ally in his war, and uses the Force to guide him to the Chiss ascendancy. He is greeted and welcomed into the meeting chambers with the 9 aristocrat leaders, and announces himself as Emperor of the galaxy. He discusses the threat that the galaxy faces, the Yuzong Vong, who don't want to rule but conquer, and eventually, after they are done with his empire, they will come for theirs. Anakin proposes an alliance to assist them in their fight to defeat the Yuzong Vong, and in exchange will vow, as long as he is Emperor, to never conquer Ascendancy space. The aristocrat leaders discuss and agree with Anakin's offer, and they present their expansive defense fleet at his service. The Chiss align themselves with Anakin's empire and begin discussing their war plan. The Chiss don't usually attack an enemy unless they are provoked. However, they see this as the only way to ensure the safety of their people, not only from the Yuzong Vong, but also from Anakin's empire. Anakin is reunited with Thrawn after meeting him in the Clone War, and knew his tactical brilliance would be pivotal in the upcoming battles. Together they plan for the war. Anakin shares the details of his military capacity, as Thrawn's mind races with the possibility of what to do. But as they're in the middle of their planning, rumors start to hit Anakin on Coruscant of the Vong's invasion into the Outer Rim. Planet after planet was destroyed, and the Hutts, who had a good relationship with Anakin, passed on information of the Vong's fleet movements to Anakin. They had destroyed Mustafar and were halfway through the Outer Rim. This surprised Anakin and Thrawn. They were here faster than they anticipated. Thrawn looks at Anakin, telling him he has a plan for the Vong. He reveals he was commanded by his superiors to keep this hidden, but realizes the weight of the Vong's invasion and knows they cannot defeat them without this information. Anakin stays silent, waiting for Thrawn to continue, who tells Anakin about Centerpoint Station. Anakin had never heard of it, and Thrawn tells him that it's an ancient piece of technology located in the Corellian system, built by the Celestials to arrange planets using its powerful gravitational tractor beam, but it also functions as a deadly superweapon capable of destroying fleets and manipulating celestial bodies. It is tied to the Force, and only someone immensely strong in the Force can use it. Anakin thinks on this. This may be their only hope of destroying the Yuzong Vong. Thrawn and Anakin remain on Coruscant and begin their countermeasures against the Vong. They send waves of Star Destroyers, each equipped with hundreds of heavy cannons and led by an Inquisitor. They attack the Vong head-on, whilst the Chiss Ascendancy attack from the unknown regions, forcing the Vong to fight on two fronts. The nature of their organic fleet caught the Imperial army off guard, but they quickly adapted with advice from Thrawn and Anakin on how to counter this. Battle after battle was won and lost. The Yuzong Vong took over Bespin and terraformed the planet to rename it Yuzang Tar and used it as their base of operations. Their main fleet resided there, and Thrawn plans for that to be the site of the final battle. As Thrawn coordinates the Imperial and Chiss forces, Anakin travels to the Corellia system with a fleet of Star Destroyers. He finds Centerpoint Station and transports it back to Coruscant. Thrawn manipulates the war so that the battles come closer and closer to Yuzang Tar until the Empire recaptures Hoth in the neighboring system and decides to launch a campaign on the Vong's base. They send a massive fleet of Star Destroyers and Chiss dreadnoughts to engage the Vong's fleet. The majority of the Vong's forces were stationed in the defense of the planet, meaning that the Imperial Alliance was no doubt outnumbered, but they pressed forward as the space erupted into a chaos of laser fire. The Yuzong Vong leader, Omni, commanded the defense of the planet. They were taking the lead, slowly destroying Star Destroyer after Star Destroyer, and believed this may be the turning point in the battle. But as Omni turned to look back at Yuzang Tar, the impossible happened. It took a second to register, but to him, it seemed like the planet was moving. He gave it 10 seconds to confirm that it really was, and behind it emerged a massive space station, and inside it was none other than Anakin himself, controlling Centerpoint Station with the Force, and used it to move Yuzang Tar aside. This gave Anakin and Centerpoint Station a clear shot from behind the Vong's fleet whilst they were preoccupied with the Imperial Alliance. Thrawn watched with a faint smile, recognizing Anakin's bold maneuver as the decisive strike of the war. Omni began to panic. He sent out a command for all of his forces to disperse and scatter, hoping to spread out far enough so that Centerpoint Station could not take them all out and escape their impending annihilation. But time was not on their side, as Anakin connected to the dark side deep within him and used this to power Centerpoint Station and fired upon the Yuzong Vong fleet. They were caught completely off guard, and the laser vaporized 90% of the Vong's fleet, leaving only stragglers and damaged vessels remaining. The tide of the war had turned. Anakin gleamed with excitement as he left Centerpoint Station and entered a single-man fighter to make his way towards the command ship. He landed and fought his way to the bridge to fight Omni one-on-one. Omni was a formidable opponent, wearing lightsaber-resistant armor and a staff that seemed to be alive. However, he was no match for the Chosen One, who burned off the armor with deadly sight since it was alive, and decapitated Omni to take his head as a trophy. With this, the majority of the Vong's fleet was destroyed, and it was only a matter of time before they were completely wiped out from the galaxy. Trillions died in the war, and Anakin would have some rebuilding to do. The Chiss and Empire decided to maintain their alliance, and the Chiss aided with the Empire's movements into the unknown regions. They vowed to unite again when they were faced with a new galactic threat, and they no doubt would be. Anakin returned to Coruscant to Padme. The moment their eyes met, the weight of the war melted away. She ran to him, wrapping her arms around him with the fierceness that he loved so deeply. In that embrace, Anakin found a peace that he had not felt since the war had started. She was ecstatic he had won the war for them, and now they could return to bringing peace to the Empire. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to watch What If Padme Was a Sith Lord and What If Padme and Anakin Started the Empire. Don't forget to check out Fantasy Sabers for the best sabers on the market, and may the Force be with you.